Hare Krishna, and we are beginning new book today. Next book, which is called Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 1, Choosing Human and Animal Lives. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the torchlight of knowledge. It is customary with this verse to offer obeisances to the spiritual master, who enlightens his disciples in the matter of transcendental knowledge. The Vedic process does not involve research work. In mundane scholarship, we have to show our academic learning by some research, but the Vedic process is different. In the Vedic process, the research work is already done, it is complete, and it is simply handed down by disciplic succession from teacher to student. There is no question of research work because the instruments and the means with which one conducts such research work are blunt and imperfect. At this stage of our material existence, we are conditioned by many laws of nature. All conditioned souls are subject to 4 defects due to the imperfection of their senses. One defect is that the conditioned soul is certain to commit mistakes. There is no man who does not commit mistakes. In India, for instance, Mahatma Gandhi was supposed to be a very great personality, but he also committed mistakes. 5 minutes before he came to the meeting at which he was killed, he was warned by confidential associates not to go, but he persisted. To commit mistakes is very natural in the conditioned state of life. Indeed, the popular saying has arisen, to err is human. Another imperfection of the conditioned soul is that he is sure to be illusioned. Being illusioned means accepting something which is not, taking some phantasmagoria to be factual. Every one of us is under the impression that we are these bodies, but actually we are not. Accepting the body to be the self is called illusion or maya. The third imperfection is that conditioned souls have a tendency to cheat. We have often heard a storekeeper say, "Because you are my friend, I won't make any profit off of you." But in actuality, we know that he is making at least 50% profit. There are so many instances of this cheating propensity. There are also many examples of teachers who actually know nothing, but put forth theories in words like perhaps or it may be, while in actuality they are simply cheating their students. The fourth imperfection is that the senses of the living entity are not perfect. Our vision is so limited that we cannot see very far away nor very near. The eye can see only under certain conditions, and therefore it is understood that our vision is limited. Similarly, all our other senses are also limited. Similarly, it is not possible to understand the unlimited by these imperfect, limited senses. The conclusion is that the Vedic process does not encourage us to endeavor to learn the absolute truth by employing our present senses, which are conditioned in so many ways. If we are to have knowledge, it must come from a superior source, which is not conditioned by these 4 imperfections. That source is Krishna. He is the supreme authority of Bhagavad Gita, and he is accepted as the perfect authority by so many saints and sages. Those who are serious students of Vedic literature accept authority. Bhagavad Gita, for example, is not a scholarly presentation which arose out of so much research work. It is perfect knowledge that was taught by Lord Krishna to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And we receive information from it that in previous ages Sri Krishna also taught it to the sun god Vivasvan, and it was handed down from time immemorial from Vivasvan by disciplic succession. Imam vivasvate yogam proktavan aham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manur ikshvakave bravit. The blessed Lord said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Bhagavad Gita 4.1. If we study Bhagavad Gita according to academic knowledge or according to our own mental speculation, we are certain to commit mistakes. It is not possible to understand Bhagavad Gita in this way. It is necessary to follow carefully in the footsteps of Arjuna. In previous ages, due to interpretation and mental speculation, the real purport of Bhagavad Gita was lost. Therefore, Krishna re-established the teaching by giving them to Arjuna. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduh sakale neha mahata yogo nashtah parantapa sa eva yam maya tedya yoga proktah puratana bhakto sime sakhacheti rahasyam hyetaduttamam. This supreme science was thus received by the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in due course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it is, appears to be lost. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee, as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand this transcendental mystery of the science. Bhagavad Gita 4:2 and 3. Thus, whoever follows in the footsteps of Arjuna, approaching Krishna in a spirit of devotion, can understand the purpose of Bhagavad Gita as well as all other Vedic scriptures. There are 4 Vedas: Sama, Rig, Yajur, and Atharva, and there are 108 Upanishads, including Ishopanishad, Katha and Taittiriya Upanishad, as well as the Vedanta Sutra, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Bhagavad Gita. These literatures are not meant for any particular class of men, but for the totality of human society. All societies can take advantage of Vedic knowledge to perfect human life. As pointed out before, human life is not meant for sense gratification, but for understanding God, the universe, and our own identity. From Vedic literatures, we can understand that this material world is only a partial manifestation of the complete creation of God. The larger portion of God's creation is found in the spiritual world of the Vaikunthas. Above and beyond this material nature, there is superior spiritual nature, as Sri Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita. Bhumirapo nalo vayuh kammano buddhirevacha ahankara iti yamme bhinna prakritirashtadha apariyamitastvanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam daryate jagat. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 comprise my separated material energies. Besides this inferior nature, O mighty Arjuna, there is a superior energy of mine, which is all living entities who are struggling with material nature and sustaining the universe. There are many material universes clustered together, and all these universes constitute the material creation. Beyond these clusters of countless material universes in the spiritual sky, which is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. So beyond these clustered, countless material universes, there is spiritual sky. Na tadbhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavakaha yadgattva na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. That abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon nor by electricity, and anyone who reaches it never comes back to this material world. Bhagavad Gita 15.6. That superior nature which is beyond this material nature is eternal. There is no history of its ever having begun. It has neither beginning nor end. Jai. Today we're going to stop here, and tomorrow we will continue on this topic of eternity and spiritual as eternal, having no beginning and no end. So thank you so much for tuning in today. We're starting this book. This is very exciting. We will see you next time. And yes, this book is available in the description. You can read, download, and copy and paste and purchase, order it, soft copy, hard copy. And yes, we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. This was Shravanam Diaries. Krishna, and we are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness, a book by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 6. Parastasmatu bhavonyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana yaksa sarveshu bhuteshu nashyatsu na vinashyati avyakto kshara ityuktas tam ahur paramam gatim yam prapya na nivartante tadhama paramam mama. There is another, eternal nature, which is transcendental to this manifested and non-manifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. That supreme status is called unmanifested and infallible, and is the highest destination. Going there, one never returns from that, my supreme abode. Bhagavad Gita 8.20 and 21. The Vedic religion, or Sanatana Dharma, Varnashrama Dharma, is also called eternal because no one can trace out its beginning. The Christian religion has a history of 2000 years, and the Mohammedan religion has a history of 1300 years. But if we try to trace out the origins of Vedic religion, we will not be able to find the beginning. Varnashrama Dharma is accepted as the eternal religion of the living entity. We often say that God created this material world, and this means that God existed before the world. Since the Lord was existing before this material manifestation, He is not subject to this creation. If He were subject to the laws of the material world, how could He have created it? That the Lord is simultaneously identical with His creation and yet exists in His completeness apart from it is stated in Bhagavad Gita. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagada vyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani machaham teshvavastitaha nacha matsthani bhutani pashyame yogamashvaram bhutabrin nacha bhutastho mamatma bhuta bhavanaha. In my transcendental form, I pervade all this creation. All things are resting in me, but I am not in them. Again, Everything that is created does not rest on me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, still myself is the very source of creation. Bhagavad Gita 9.4 and 5. Actually, we are all spirit souls and are intended to associate with God in the spiritual sky, where there are innumerable spiritual planets and innumerable spiritual living entities. However, those who are not fit to live in that spiritual world are sent to this material world. This very idea is expressed by Milton in Paradise Lost. Although spirit soul, we have voluntarily accepted this material body, and by accepting it, have also accepted the threefold miseries of material nature. Exactly when we accepted it and how we accepted it cannot be traced out. No one can trace out the history of when the conditioned soul first began accepting these material bodies. At present, Darwin's theory of the evolution of organic matter is very prominent in institutions of higher learning. But there is information given in the Padma Purana and other authoritative scriptures of the living entity's spiritual evolution from one bodily form to another. This Purana informs us that there are 8,400,000 forms of living entities, 900,000 of which live within water. There are 2 million species amongst plants and vegetables alone, and present everyone is giving stress to Darwin's theory. But in Vedic literature, there is immense information about the different species. Darwin expresses the opinion that the species are evolving from lower forms of life, but this is not the whole truth. The soul may progress from lower forms to higher forms, but in the beginning of creation, all species were created by Sri Krishna, as indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpada visrijamyaham prakritim svamavastabhya visrijami punah punah bhutagramam imam kritsnam avasham prakriter vashat. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, every material manifestation enters into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I again create. The whole cosmic order is under me, but my will is it manifested again and again, and by my will is it annihilated at the end. Bhagavad Gita 9.7 and 8. All of these living entities are subject to the threefold miseries, including those miseries pertaining to the body and mind. Animals cannot understand that they are suffering, but human beings can. One who does not know that he is suffering is an animal condition, animal consciousness. Animals may be standing behind a fence to be slaughtered, but they do not understand this. As human beings, we should be cognizant that we are suffering the pains of birth, old age, disease, and death, and should be inquisitive to know how to avoid these miseries. We have been suffering from the beginning of our birth, when as a baby we were tightly placed for 9 months in the womb of a mother. After birth, suffering continues. Although a mother may take much care for her child, the baby still cries. Why? Because he is suffering. Either a bug is biting, or there's a pain in the stomach, or some other malady. Whatever the case, the suffering goes on. The child also suffers when he is forced to go to school, when he doesn't want to. The child does not want to study, but the teacher gives him tasks anyway. If we carefully analyze our lives, we will find that they are full of suffering. Generally speaking, conditioned souls are not very intelligent, and therefore they go on suffering without ever inquiring why. We should understand, however, that this suffering is there, and if there is a remedy, we must take advantage of it. The great sage Rishabhadeva instructed his sons in this way: "My dear boys, in this life you have acquired these beautiful bodies. Now you should know that they are not meant for sense gratification like the bodies of hogs and dogs, but for spiritual realization." Essentially, what Rishabhadeva is saying is that a life of sense gratification is meant for stool eaters like hogs, and now that we have a higher form of life, we should not try to imitate the lower forms. Recently, we were surprised to see, while walking in Central Park in New York City, that a group of young American boys and girls were engaged in worshipping hogs. While we were chanting Hare Krishna, these groups of youngsters were chanting, "Hog, hog, hog." They were actually parading with hogs in Central Park and bowing down before them and worshipping them. They actually wanted one hog to become president, and they wanted the hogs to lead them. This has gone to so much length that at 1B in Seattle there was a demonstration with hogs in which the boys and girls undressed themselves and got in the mud and played with the hogs, and in this way they were associating with the hogs and pigs which they worshipped. All this is going on in a country where young people have good-looking bodies, a great deal of money, and so many other advantages over the young people of other nations. The result of gaining all these advantages is that they have simply taken to hog worship. Such hog worship was anticipated long, long ago and was described in Srimad Bhagavatam, which was compiled at least 5,000 years ago. The point is that a beautiful situation in life should be utilized for a beautiful end, not for degraded forms of worship. In the Vedic histories, we find that there were many exalted emperors and kings who practiced austerities and penances. Dhruva Maharaj, Ambarisha Maharaj, and Yudhishthir Maharaj were all great kings and were most opulent, but at the same time they were great sages. Thus, they set the example for those who have acquired this good opportunity of a beautiful human form of life with all the facilities for economic development and good living. This opportunity should be used to attain an even better life, and this can be actualized by practice of penance. At present we are existing in these material bodies, but if we take to the process of Krishna consciousness, our consciousness will be purified. Although American and European, the young students who are voluntarily practicing Krishna consciousness are very pleased to participate in, to practice it. The process is not troublesome, but pleasing. Now they are realizing that purified existence constitutes the difference between animal life and human life. If we purify our existence simply by following the basic regulations of Krishna consciousness, which involve abstaining from illicit sexual connection, meat eating, intoxication, and gambling, we will gradually rise to attain our spiritual existence, which is completely pure. The sage Rishabhadeva told his sons that once they purified their existence, they would have unlimited happiness. We are all intended to attain peace and happiness, but whatever peace and happiness we find in this material world is limited. If we but purify our existence and attain spiritual existence, we will experience unlimited peace and happiness. The spiritual world is not dry or abstract. As pointed out before, there is variegatedness there. A part of the spiritual pleasure experienced in the Vaikunthas is the pleasure of dancing. There are also young boys and girls there. Indeed, there is no such thing as old age or disease or death or the pains of birth. If we want to participate in the unlimited happiness, knowledge, and eternal life which constitute our actual heritage in the spiritual world, we should not waste this life by working hard for sense gratification and worshipping hogs. We should accept a life devoted to the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, and then we will get unlimited happiness and unlimited pleasure. This is the sum and substance of the Krishna Consciousness movement. Jai. We have completed the first chapter of this book. Wow. Jai. Thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description. This was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, and we are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 13, Chapter 2, Hard Struggle for Happiness. In the revealed scriptures, the Supreme Lord is described as Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. Sat means eternal, Chit means fully cognizant, Ananda means joyful, and Vigraha means that he is a person. Thus the Lord, or the Supreme Godhead, who is one without a second, is a fully cognizant and eternally joyful personality with a full sense of his identity. No one is equal to him or greater than him. This is a concise description of the Supreme Lord. The living entities, jivas, are minute samples of the Lord, the Supreme Lord, and being so, they therefore find in their activities the desire for eternal existence, for complete knowledge, and for happiness. These desires are evident in human society and in the upper planetary systems, Svargaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka, Brahmaloka, etc. The living entities enjoy a longer duration of life, an increased amount of knowledge, and a generally more blissful existence in those higher planetary systems. But even in the highest planets in this material world, where the duration of life and standard of enjoyment are thousands and thousands of times greater than those on Earth, there is still old age, disease, and death. Consequently, the level of enjoyment is insignificant in comparison to the eternal bliss enjoyed in the company of the Supreme Lord. Loving service to the Supreme Lord is different in different relationships. It makes even the enjoyment of impersonal Brahman as insignificant as a drop of water in comparison to the ocean. Every living being desires the topmost level of enjoyment in this material world, and yet everyone is unhappy here. This unhappiness is present on all the higher planets, despite a larger lifespan, higher standards of enjoyment and comfort. That is due to the law of material nature. We can increase the duration of life and standard to the highest capacity, and yet, by the law of material nature, we will be unhappy. The reason for this is that the quality of happiness which is suitable for our constitution is different from the happiness which is derived from material activities. Wow! Look at that. the quality of happiness, suitable for our spiritual constitution, is different from material. The living entity is a minute particle of the superior spiritual energy of the Lord, which is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, and therefore he has the necessary propensity for joy, which is spiritual in quality. Unfortunately for him, he is trying vainly to attain his enjoyment from the foreign atmosphere of material nature. A fish that is taken out of the water cannot be happy by any arrangement on land. He must be supplied with water. In the same way, the minute Satchit Ananda living entity cannot be really happy through any amount of planning conceived by his illusioned brain in the material universe. He must therefore be given a different type of happiness, which is spiritual in essence. Our ambition should be aimed at enjoying spiritual bliss and not this temporary happiness. Some philosophers claim that spiritual bliss is attained by negating material happiness and material existence. Theoretical negation of material activities as propounded by Sripad Shankaracharya may be effective for an insignificant section of mankind, but the best and surest way for everyone to attain spiritual bliss was propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by means of devotional activities. These devotional activities can change the very face of material nature. Hankering after material happiness is called lust, and lusty activities are sure to meet with frustration in the long run. The body of a snake is very cold, but if a man wanting to enjoy this coolness garlands himself with a venomous snake, he will surely be killed by the snake's venomous bite. Wow, have you ever heard this analogy before? Krishna, all these analogies should be really incredible. Wow, what an analogy. The material senses are compared to snakes. Indulgence in material happiness will surely kill our spiritual identity. Therefore, a sane man should be ambitious to find the real source of happiness. In order to find the source, however, we need some knowledge of what that happiness is. There is a story of the foolish man who had no experience with sugarcane. When he asked his friend about the characteristics of sugarcane, he was imperfectly informed that sugarcane resembles the shape of a bamboo stick. Consequently, he began trying to extract juice from bamboo sticks, but naturally he was baffled in his attempts. This is the situation with the illusioned living entity who, in his search for eternal happiness, tries to extract happiness from this material world, which is not only full of miseries, but is also transient and flickering. In Bhagavad Gita, the material world is described as being full of miseries. Abrahama bhuvanam loka punaravartino arjuna mamupetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. From the highest planet in this material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, where repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Bhagavad Gita 8.16. The ambition of happiness, ambition for happiness, is natural and good, but the attempt to derive it from inert matter by so-called scientific arrangements is an illusory attempt doomed to frustration. Those who are befooled cannot understand this, how a person is driven by the lust for material happiness.
is also described in Bhagavad Gita. Idamadya maya labdham imam prapsye manoratham idam astitamapi me bhavishyati punardhanam. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. Bhagavad Gita 16.13. This atheistic or godless civilization is a huge affair contrived for the gratification of our senses, and now we're all mad after money in order to maintain this empty shell. Money is sought after by everyone because that is the medium of exchange for objects for sense enjoyment, sense gratification. Obviously, the expectation of peace in such an atmosphere of gold rush pandemonium is a utopian dream. As long as there is the slightest tinge of sense gratification or desire for sense gratification, peace will remain far, far away. This is because by nature we are all eternal servants of the Supreme Lord and therefore cannot enjoy anything for our personal interests. It is therefore necessary for us to learn how to employ our senses in the transcendental service of the Lord and to utilize everything to serve His interest. This alone can bring about much desired peace. A part of the body cannot in itself be independently happy. It can only derive its happiness and pleasure out of serving the entire body. The Supreme Lord is the whole, and we are parts. But we are all busily engaged in activities of self-interest. No one is prepared to serve the Lord. This is the basic cause for our conditioning in material existence and for our resultant unhappiness. From the highest executive in this skyscraper office down to coolie in the street, all are working with the thought of accumulating wealth legally or illegally. Actually, it is all illegal, for to work for one's self-interest is both unlawful and destructive. Look at that. Self-interest is actually destructive if it's not our actual self. Even the cultivation of spiritual realization for one's own self-interest is unlawful and destructive. Haribol. Okay, the point is that all activities must be directed to the satisfaction of Krishna and His service. Those who are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord wrongly think they are accumulating so much money day after day. Asha pasha shatar badha kama krodha parayanah ihante kamam bhogartham anyayenartha sanchayan. Being bound by hundreds and thousands of desires, by lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Bhagavad Gita 16.12. Jai, we're going to stop here for today on this note. Yes, and we're going to continue tomorrow about description of basically the hard struggle for happiness in this unnatural material situation for us blissful spirit souls. Jai. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and the link to this book is in the description. This was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. Yes, I mention usually that there is a Gmail, shravanamteam@gmail.com. You can send your inquiries or feedback. It's in the description. Yes, so have a good day, everyone. Hare Krishna. back with the elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 18. Consequently, although there is no lack of money in the world, there is a scarcity of peace. So much human energy is being diverted to making money, for the general population has increased its capacity to make more and more dollars. But in the long run, the result is that this unrestricted and unlawful monetary inflation has created a bad economy all over the world and has provoked us to manufacture huge and costly weapons to destroy the very result of such cheap money-making. The leaders of the big money-making countries are not really enjoying peace, but are making plans to save themselves from imminent destruction by nuclear weapons. In fact, huge sums of money are being thrown into the sea by way of experiments with these dreadful weapons. Such experiments are being carried out not only at huge costs, but also at the cost of many lives. In this way, the nations are being bound by the laws of karma. When men are motivated by the impulse for sense gratification, whatever money is earned is spoiled, being spent for the destruction of the human race. The energy of the human race is thus wasted by the laws of nature because of man's aversion to the Lord. Who is actually the proprietor of all energies. Wow. So because of our aversion to the Lord, the energy of our human race is wasted by the laws of nature. Wealth is worshipped and is thus referred to as Mother Lakshmi, or the goddess of fortune. It is her position to serve Lord Narayana, the source of all the Naras, or living beings. The Naras are also meant to serve Narayana, under the guidance of the goddess of fortune. The living being cannot enjoy the goddess of fortune without serving Narayana, and therefore whoever desires to enjoy her wrongly will be punished by the laws of nature. These laws will make certain that the money itself will bring about destruction instead of peace and prosperity. Look at that. Unlawfully accumulated money is now being snatched from miserly citizens by various methods of state taxation for the future civil and international war fund, which is spending money in a wasteful and destructive manner. The citizens are no longer satisfied with just enough money to maintain a family nicely and cultivate spiritual knowledge, both of which are essential in human life. Now everyone wants money unlimitedly to satisfy insatiable desires. In proportion to the people's unlawful desires, their accumulated money is taken away by the agents of illusory energy in the shape of medical practitioners, lawyers, tax collectors, societies, constitutions, so-called holy men, famines, earthquakes, and many similar calamities. One miser was hesitated to purchase a copy of Back to Godhead magazine, spent $2 for a week's supply of medicine, and then died. Another man was refused to spend a cent for the service of the Lord, wasted thousands of dollars in a legal suit between the members of his home. There are innumerable similar instances occasioned by the dictation of illusory nature. Indeed, that is the law of nature. If money is not devoted to the service of the Lord, it must be spent as spoiled energy in the form of legal problems or diseases. Foolish people do not have the eyes to see such facts, therefore the laws of the Supreme Lord befool them. The laws of nature do not allow us to accept more money than is required for proper maintenance. There is ample arrangement by the law of nature to provide every living being with his due share of food and shelter. But the insatiable lusts of human beings have disturbed the arrangement set forth by the Almighty Father of all species of life. By the arrangement of the Supreme Lord, there is an ocean of salt, because salt is so necessary for the living being. God has in the same manner arranged for sufficient air and light, which are also essential. Anyone can collect any amount of salt from the natural storehouse, but constitutionally we cannot take more salt than we need. If we take more salt, we spoil the broth, and if we take less salt, our food becomes tasteless. On the other hand, if we take only what we require, our food is tasty and we are healthy. Presently, there is a great deal of concern over the fact that our natural resources are becoming polluted and exhausted. Actually, there is ample supply, but due to misuse and greed, everything is spoiled. Everything is being spoiled. What conversationists and ecologists do not understand is that everything will continue to be spoiled by the insatiable lusts of mankind unless this Krishna consciousness process is taken up. It is impossible to have peace on any platform of existence without Krishna consciousness. Man is therefore suffering due to his insatiable desires and lusts. Not only is man suffering, but the planet on which he resides, his Mother Earth, represented in Srimad Bhagavatam by Mother Cow, is also suffering. Once a well-known Swami in India was asked whether God or Providence is responsible for the sufferings of humanity. The Swami replied that these sufferings were all God's pastimes, or Leela. The questioner continued to ask why a living entity should be put under the dictations of the law of karma. The Swami could not answer these questions to the satisfaction of his inquirers. The monists and impersonalists who think only in terms of oneness of the living entities with the Supreme Lord cannot give satisfactory answers to such questions. Such an imperfect reply can hardly satisfy the heart of a living entity. The Lord is described in all scriptures as Leela Purushottama, or the personality of Godhead, who is by his own nature always engaged in transcendental pastimes. In the Vedanta Sutra, he is also described as Anandamayo Bhyasat. The monists and impersonalists try with great difficulty to explain the sutra in diverse ways in order to support their imperfect theory of oneness and impersonality. However, the fact remains that Ananda, pleasure, cannot be enjoyed alone. That variety is the mother of enjoyment is a well-known fact. Cities, for instance, are known to be attractive if they contain a variety of things. Living entities are naturally attracted by variety, by attractive streets, buildings, cinemas, parks, conveyances, businesses, employments, foodstuffs, etc. Despite all this variety, the English poet Cowper once said, "The city is made by man, but the country is made by God." The countryside is also full of natural variegatedness in a crude form, whereas in the city, this variegatedness is displayed in a modernized scientific manner. Poets, like Cowper, are attracted to the variegatedness of the country, and prosaic people who live in the city are attracted by the colorful varieties manufactured by man. In any case, it is variegatedness which attracts people both to the country and the city. This is the proper explanation of the verse of the Vedanta Sutra. Many so-called swamis who are so frequently attracted by the cities often seek a kind of pleasure in society and feminine friendship. Generally, they are not attracted by the natural beauty of the woods, although they may assume the dress of a man who is meant to live in the woods. Such swamis are seeking varieties of enjoyment in matter, because they have no information of the variegatedness of spiritual life. On the one hand, they enjoy variegatedness in matter, and on the other hand, they deny spiritual variegatedness to the Absolute. Because they are pledged to the theory of monism and impersonalism, they deny that whatever pertains to matter can pertain also to spirit. According to them, spirit is the denial of matter. The fact is, however, that spirit is not a negation of matter, but matter is a perverted reflection of spirit. The real pleasure of variety exists in spirit without deluding relativity. On the other hand, inert matter in association with dynamic spirit manifests a false representation or a perverted reflection of that very spiritual variegatedness, which is so adamantly denied by the monist class of the so-called swamis. As stated before, the Supreme Lord is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, joyful by nature, and therefore he expands himself by his different energies, parts, and differentiated and plenary portions. The Supreme Lord is the absolute truth, and he is one without a second, but he also includes his diverse energies, parts, and plenary portions which are simultaneously one with and different from him. Because he is joyful by nature, he expands himself in diverse ways, and the activities of these expansions are called his transcendental pastimes, or lila, his lila. These pastimes, however, are not blind or inert. They exhibit full sense, independence, and freedom of action and reaction. The complexities of the actions and reactions of the diverse energies of the Absolute Truth constitute the subject matter of a vast science called the Transcendental Science of God, and the Bhagavad Gita is the ABC, or primary book of knowledge for students interested in that science. Every intelligent human being should become interested in this transcendental science. Indeed, according to the opinion of the sages, human life is only meant for learning this science. The opening words of the Vedanta Sutra proclaim, "Now is the time to inquire about Brahman." Human life by nature is full of suffering, and lower life forms are even more miserable. Any sane man with properly discriminating senses can understand that life in the material world is full of miseries, and that no one is free from the actions and reactions of such miseries. This is not a pessimistic view of life, but is an actual fact that we should not be blinded to. The miseries of life are divided into three categories, namely, miseries arising from the body and mind, miseries arising from other living entities, and miseries arising due to natural calamities. A sane man must look to eliminate these miseries and therefore become happy in life. We are all trying to achieve peace and freedom from these miseries, at least unconsciously, and in the higher intellectual circles there are attempts to get rid of these miseries by ingenious plans and designs. But the power that baffles all the plans and designs of even the most intelligent person is the power of Maya Devi, or the illusory energy. The law of karma, or the result of all actions and reactions in the material world, is controlled by this all-powerful energy, illusory energy. The activities of this energy function according to principles and regulations, and they act consciously under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Everything is done by nature in full consciousness. Nothing is blind or accidental. This material energy is also called Durga, which indicates that it is a force which is very difficult to surpass. No one can surpass the laws of Durga by any amount of childish plans. Jai, we're going to stop here. Lately we're stopping on a very dramatic notes, but yes, this will be it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yes, we will continue tomorrow about heart struggles that we're going through due to our association with the illusory energy of the Lord because of our aversion to Him. So stay tuned, and this was Shravanam Diaries. The link to this book is in the description, as well as our email for your feedback or questions. And we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. And we are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, page number 24. To get rid of the sufferings of humanity is simultaneously a very difficult and also a very easy affair. As long as the conditioned souls, who are themselves bound up by the laws of nature, manufacture plans to get rid of the three miseries, there will be no solution. The only effective solutions are those mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, and we have to adopt them in our practical lives for our own benefit. The three miseries of material nature are not found in the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. As mentioned before, He is eternally joyful, and His transcendental pastimes are not different from Him. Because He is the Absolute Truth, His name, fame, form, qualities, and pastimes are all identical with Him. His pastimes, therefore, cannot be equated with the sufferings of humanity, as the so-called Swami contends. The pastimes of the Supreme Lord are transcendental to the actual miseries and sufferings of human beings. The sufferings of humanity are caused by the misuse of the discriminative power or the little independence which is given to individual souls. The fraudulent swamis or mental speculators, in order to remain consistent with the theory of monism, must pass off the miseries of mankind as the pastimes of God. But actually, these miseries are only the enforced punishments of Maya Devi, inflicted upon the misguided, conditioned souls. Yes, so this is what we should say to those people who are saying, enjoy the pain and stuff, right? There are such categories of people. Seriously, I just always really, whatever's happening to you, just, enjoy it, be happy, no matter what. Really? Okay, so continuing. As living entities, we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Indeed, we actually belong to His superior energy. As such, we may join His transcendental pastimes in our unconditioned state of life. But as long as we are conditioned by the laws of karma, in contact with the inferior energy, our sufferings are our own creations, born of a gross misuse of our little independence. The impersonalist monists only misguide people by contending that the threefold miseries are a part of the Lord's pastimes. Such impersonalists and monists have misguided their followers because they incorrectly think that the Supreme Lord and the individual souls are equal in all respects. True, the individual souls are equal in quality with the Supreme Lord, but not in quantity. If the individual soul were quantitatively equal to the Supreme Lord, he would have never been subjected to the laws of material nature. Material nature is subordinate to the will of the Supreme Lord, and therefore he cannot be subjected to the laws of material nature. It is contradictory for the Lord to be subjected to the laws of his own inferior energy. Matah parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutremani ganaiva. Quote, O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 7.7. Again, Sri Krishna states, Tribhir gunamayer bhavair ebhi sarvamidam jagat mohitam nabhijanati mamebhyah paramavyayam. Quote, deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above them and inexhaustible. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 7.13. The individual souls who are put into the miseries of the material world are suffering the resultant reactions of their unsanctioned activities. This is the verdict of Bhagavad Gita. Tanaham dvishatah kruran samshareshu naradaman kshipam yajad samashubhan asurishveva yonishu. Quote, envious, mischievous, the lowest of mankind, these do I ever put back into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 16.19. The parts and parcels are meant to serve the whole, and when they misuse their independence, they are subject to the miseries of the laws of matter, just as criminals are subject to police action. The state considers its citizens to be its parts and parcels, and when a citizen misuses his relative independence, the state puts him under the police custody, police authority. The life of a citizen outside the prison and the life of a citizen within the prison are not the same. Similarly, the sufferings of the living entities within the prison of material nature cannot be equated with the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, which exist in the absolute freedom of Satchit Ananda. No government wants its citizens to act in such a way that they must go to prison and suffer tribulations. The prison house is undoubtedly constructed by the state government, but this does not mean that the government is anxious for its citizens to be put into it. Indirectly, the disobedient citizens force the government to construct the prison house. It is not done for the pleasure of the government, which has to spend a great deal of money in constructing and maintaining it. On the contrary, the government would be very glad to demolish prisons altogether, provided that there are no disobedient citizens in the state. In the same way, this material world is created by the Supreme Lord, but the Supreme Lord does not will that living entities be put in it. The living entities themselves make that decision. The residents of the material world are therefore different from those who are eternally engaged in the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. The impersonal monists have no information of full-fledged, independent life in the eternal spiritual realm. According to them, the spiritual realm is simply void. This is like prisoners thinking that there is no life outside of prison. Life outside of a prison is certainly free from prison activities, but is not devoid of activity. The soul is by nature eternally active, but the impersonalists try to negate the activities of the soul in the spiritual realm. Thus, they misunderstand the miseries of prison life to be the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. This is due to their poor fund of knowledge. The Supreme Lord never creates the actions and reactions of an individual soul. This is it. Next time we blame God. In Bhagavad Gita, this matter is clearly defined in the following way. Na kartritvam na karmani lokasya srijati prabhuh na karma phala samyogam svabhavastu pravartate na datte kasyachit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhuh ajnanena vritam jnanam tena muhyanti jantava. Quote, the embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Nor does the Supreme Spirit assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 5.14, 15. 14 to 15. It is clear from these passages that the sufferings of humanity are not to be equated with the pastimes of the Supreme Being, nor is the Supreme Being responsible for them. The Lord is never responsible for anyone's vices or virtues. By vicious actions, we are put into more and more distressful conditions, whereas by pious actions, we place ourselves on the path of happiness. Thus, man is the architect of his own material distress or happiness. The Lord does not want the living entity to become entangled in the reactions of activities, be they good or bad. He simply wants everyone to go back home, back to Godhead. As long as we are not awakened to our pure, eternal relation to God, we are certainly bewildered in our actions. Our actions in respect to right and wrong are all performed on the platform of ignorance. We must rise to the platform of pure knowledge, which is the pure realization that we are the eternal servitors of the Supreme Lord and enjoyers of His transcendental pastimes. The Supreme Lord is the master enjoyer of those pastimes, and we are the servitor enjoyers. Transcendental knowledge is only attainable by transcendental devotional service, as described in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. Quote, to those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 10.10. By rendering such devotional service only, and not by merely acquiring a bulk of discriminative knowledge, can we know the Supreme Lord as He is. When we know the personality of Godhead in reality, we can then enter into His pastimes. His pastimes. That is the verdict of all revealed scriptures. Jai, we have completed the second chapter, and tomorrow we're going to start third chapter called Toward a Peaceful Society. Jai. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And yes, may I remind you that the link to this wonderful book is in the description, as well as our email. Please connect with us if you like, and please read this book along or gift it to your friend. As you can see, it really gives a deeper understanding of what is the Supreme Lord, what is karma, and what connection we have to all this. So this was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, and we are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Starting chapter 3, Toward the Peaceful Society, page number 31. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetram Ityabhidiyate Etadyo Veti Tat Prahuh Kshetragya Iti Tadvidah. The Supreme Lord said, "This body, O son of Kunti, is called the field, and one who knows this body is called the knower of the field." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 13.2. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is instructing Arjuna about the knowledge of Kshetra and Kshetragya. Kshetra refers to the field, which is the body, and Kshetragya refers to the knower of the field, who is the individual soul. If land is to be cultivated, there must be some cultivator, and if this body, which is linked onto a field, is to be cultivated, there must be a proprietor who can cultivate it. Now, we have these material bodies, and it is our duty to cultivate them. It is our duty to cultivate them properly. That cultivation is called akarma, or work. A person may come to our place with a hoe to cultivate land, or he may come to simply drink coffee or tea. We have been given this particular type of body to cultivate and to attain required sense objects according to our desires. This body is a gift from God. God is very kind, and if someone wants something from Him, He allows it. "All right," He says, "take this." His relationship to us is just like the relationship of a father to a son. The son may insist upon getting something from the father, and the father may try to convince him that what he wants is not for his good, saying, "My dear son, don't touch this. This is not good for you." But when the boy insists upon it, the father will allow him to have it. The affectionate father gives the son just what he wants. Similarly, the Supreme Father gives his sons and daughters just what they want. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that all beings in all species of life are his children. Sarvayonishu Kaunteya Murtayah Sambhavantiyah Tasam Brahma Mahadyonir Aham Bija Pradapita. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving Father. Bhagavad Gita 14.4. In this material world, the mother, Prakriti, which is material nature, supplies us with the body, and the Supreme Father impregnates this matter with living souls. There is an erroneous theory current that only human beings have souls and that other living entities do not. But we understand from Vedic authority that there are over 8 million species of bodies, including plants and trees, and that they all have souls. Otherwise, they would not be able to develop and grow. In this verse, Sri Krishna claims that all living entities, regardless of the forms they take in this material world, are his sons, and that they are related to him, as a son is related to his father. This Krishna consciousness is especially meant for understanding the position of the soul and its relationship with God. Kshetragyam chapimam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetraghyayor jnanam yattach jnanam mata mama. O sign of Bharata, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies, and to understand this body and its knower is called knowledge. That is my opinion. Bhagavad Gita 13.3. If we meditate upon this body and study whether or not we are actually the body, we will come to the conclusion that we are Kshetragya, the knower of the body, but not the body. If we study our finger and consider whether or not we are the finger, we will come to the conclusion that we are not the finger or any other part of the body, but that the finger, the arms, the legs, the head, etc. are our fingers, arms, legs, etc. In this way, we can come to the conclusion that we are not these bodies, but that the bodies belong to us. Therefore, we say, this is my body. Unfortunately, people in this modern civilization never stop to inquire what they are or who they are. They're simply laboring. Yeah, means like they never stop to actually inquire. It's not like they never stop inquiring, right? They never stop and actually inquire what they are, who they are. They are simply laboring hard, working hard all day in an office or factory, under the impression that I'm this body. And if we ask people who they are, they simply say, I'm Hindu, I'm Muslim, I'm Swedish, I'm American, I'm Christian, etc. And these are various identifications or designations of the body. But the fact is that we are not these bodies. The body is simply the field of our activities. We are no more than the body than the cultivator of a field is the field. There are different kinds of bodies and different activities in accordance to the different types of bodies. A dog enjoys one kind of activity, a cat enjoys another, and a human enjoys another. There are differences of activity due to differences of body. When we come to the platform of truth, however, and understand that we are not these bodies, then our activities change from material activities to spiritual activities. As long as we are operating under the bodily conception of life, our activities are material. But as soon as we understand, I do not belong to this body, Aham Brahmasmi, I am spirit soul, our activities will be in accordance to that realization. That is to say, that they will cease to be motivated from the material or bodily platform. Knowledge of our proper identity as separate from the body is real knowledge, but this knowledge is denied as long as we cling to bodily identification. In the scriptures, it is said that as long as we are in this bodily conception of life, all our activities will be defeated. A child is born into ignorance, and if, as he grows older, he remains under the bodily conception of life, he lives in darkness. His position is that of a Shudra. In the Vedic literatures, we find that in this age everyone is born a Shudra. Therefore, everyone requires to be educated as to his real identity. If, however, we remain satisfied with our birth by our father and mother, we will remain in our condition as Shudra. We have to rise to the Brahminical platform by following the purificatory processes. As mentioned before, there are 4 basic characteristics of an impure life: illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. According to the Vedic principles, sex should not be indulged in outside of marriage. In human society, there is therefore a system of marriage which distinguishes us from the cats and dogs. Whether we are Hindu, Muslim, or Christian, we acknowledge the system of marriage. The purpose of the system is to avoid illicit sex. According to the Vedic system, intoxication is also discouraged, nor is meat eating advocated, for human beings should be non-violent. We have been given sufficient grains, fruits, milk, and vegetables, and there is no necessity to kill poor animals. Some people may argue that if we do not eat meat, we will be undernourished. But we can see that the students of this Krishna Consciousness movement have given up meat and are very healthy, whereas people who are eating meat are still, despite their meat eating, subject to so many diseases and unhealthy conditions. Gambling is also discouraged because it simply agitates the mind. This, then, is the purificatory process by which one can become a Brahmana. This path is open to everyone. A Brahmana is one who is truthful and pure, tolerant and simple, full of knowledge and faith in God. Wouldn't that be wonderful if there would be more people in this world, or everyone would just be trained and rise to the platform of being so truthful and pure, tolerant and simple, full of knowledge and faith in God? Can you just imagine? He can control his mind and his senses. Also, at the present moment, there is a great necessity for Brahmanas, because almost everyone is a Shudra. For almost everyone is wholly engaged in maintaining the body, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, all symptoms of animals and Shudras. Society cannot be peaceful unless there are 4 divisions of human beings functioning in harmony with one another. These 4 divisions are comprised of Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. These are discussed by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita in this way. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhargashaha tasya kartaram apimam vidya kartaram avyayam. According to the 3 modes of material nature and the work ascribed to them, the 4 divisions of human society were created by me, and although I am the creator of the system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Bhagavad Gita 4.13. These 4 divisions of man in human society are natural, not artificial, because in the material world everything is operating under the influence of the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. As long as we are in the material world, it is not possible to classify everyone in the same category, because each and every person is working under the influence of the modes of material nature. However, when we transcend the material nature, there is oneness. The material plane should be transcended. At that time, all the divisions fall apart. The question is therefore how to transcend the modes of material nature, and that transcendence is the very process of Krishna Consciousness. As soon as we become situated in Krishna Consciousness, we become transcendental to the modes of material nature. Mamcha vyabhicharena bhakti yogina sevate sagunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. This is from Bhagavad Gita 14.26. Thus, one who is engaged in Krishna conscious activity is at once elevated to the transcendental position. By nature, we are not matter, but Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. The philosophy of Shankaracharya is mainly based on the principle that we should not think that we are products of this material nature. It is by some unfortunate accident that we are in contact with material nature. Actually, our nature is that of spirit, Brahman, and that nature has to be invoked. This material life is a diseased condition. When we are situated in Brahman, we are in our healthy condition. That healthy Brahman condition is immediately attained as soon as we engage ourselves 100% in Krishna consciousness. Jai, we're going to stop here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description, as well as our email. We'll be glad to hear from you. Stay tuned. This was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. We are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, page number 37. When we transcend material nature through the rendering of service unto Krishna, what is our status? Do we become zero? Some philosophies maintain that after liberation from material life, after the nirvana of this material body, we become zero, void. That is a dangerous theory. By nature, the living entity is not attracted to zero. We may be diseased and suffering from so many elements, but if our doctor comes and says, "Let me finish your ailments by killing you," we will immediately say, no, better let me suffer from the disease. We do not want to be killed just to end our miseries. Thus, the theory that after material life there is a void is not at all attractive, nor it is a fact. We are Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, and part and parcel of the Supreme. The Supreme Lord is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, and we are qualitatively one with Him. Although very small, a drop of seawater is as salty as the sea, and although we are but spiritual atoms, we have the same properties as the Supreme Spirit whole. There is no question of being void, for as living entities, our spiritual propensities are all there in infinite variegatedness. If, however, out of the frustration of material existence, we commit suicide, we do not end our miseries. We simply create other miseries. If one attempts suicide but does not succeed, or is somehow revived, he is subject to being punished under state law. Similarly, the laws of nature treat suicides as criminal acts. We are to end this material life only after finding out the true blissful life of eternity. We should not simply be trying to end the miseries of this life simply out of frustration, but we should engage ourselves in activities that will rise us to spiritual life. The 4 divisions of human society were created by Sri Krishna in order to facilitate this process of elevation. Just as a student is elevated from a lower class to a postgraduate class, the divisions of labor, Chaturvarnyam, are created to elevate us from the lowest stages of consciousness to the highest stage of Krishna consciousness. This process is a process of cooperation. In the human body, the most important part is the head, then the arms, the belly, and the legs. Although the head is considered to be the most important part, there's no question of neglecting the legs or any other part. Similarly, in the divisions of human society, no one division is important to the exclusion of the others. Of these divisions, the Brahmanas are considered to be the intellectual class, the class of teachers. The Kshatriyas are the administrative and military class. The Vaishyas are the mercantile and agricultural class, and the Shudras are the common laborer class. In a properly run society, all of these classes are required. If they cooperate in their progress toward Krishna consciousness, there is no strife amongst them. In the present social status, we find that we are existing in these 4 divisions, but there is no cooperation. Everyone is dissatisfied. Today, there is a great strife between the capitalist class and laborer class, because between them there is no compromise. There's only friction. All the strife amongst the classes is due to lack of Krishna consciousness. Indeed, there's not even a possibility of cooperation unless there is Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is absolutely essential for harmonizing all facets of human society. Regardless of what class we belong to, if we cooperate in Krishna consciousness, there will be peace in the world. Thus, Krishna consciousness is the utmost necessity for all divisions of society. Every chapter and every conclusion of Bhagavad Gita aim toward Krishna consciousness. Sri Krishna, who is speaking Bhagavad Gita, is always stressing devotion to his personal self. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evashyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. Quote, always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 18.65. Throughout Bhagavad Gita we find this word mam stressed. Mam means unto me, meaning unto Krishna. But there are miscreants who are interpreting this mam to mean everyone. When I say bring me a glass of water, does it mean that I want you to bring everyone a glass of water? The individuality is there, but by jugglery of words, they interpret me or I to mean everyone. Consequently, when Krishna says I, the miscreants identify this I with themselves. This is a gross misinterpretation. Although Bhagavad Gita is very popular in the world, due to this misinterpretation by mundane scholars, it has not been properly understood. Bhagavad Gita clearly explains that this Chaturvarnyam system was established by Krishna, but he is outside of the system. When Krishna comes as an incarnation, he does not come as a member of any social order, not as a Brahmana or anything else. When Krishna came, he came as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. Vasudeva belonged to the royal family and was therefore a Kshatriya. As such, Krishna played the part of a Kshatriya, but this does not mean that Krishna belonged to the Kshatriya class. There are many incarnations of Krishna in many forms of life. In one incarnation he appeared as a fish, as the member of the community of fishes, but this does not mean that he is a fish. If we think upon seeing a fish that it belongs to Krishna's family, we are mistaken. Of course, from another point of view, everything is Krishna, but Krishna is aloof from everything. This is the transcendental nature of Krishna, and if we understand it, we will be liberated from birth and death. Although Krishna has established the 4 divisions of human society, he is not in any one of them. Tasya kartaram apimam vidya kartaram avyayam. As soon as we understand that although Krishna was born into a Kshatriya family, he's not a Kshatriya, we actually become liberated. If we think that because Krishna acts in a particular way, as on the battlefield he gave instructions to Arjuna to fight, he is bound by the reactions of his activities, we are mistaken. Works do not defile me, Shri Krishna says, Namam karmani limpanti. In conclusion, we must accept the fact that when Krishna comes as one of us, he is not in actuality one of us. He is transcendental. This fact we must learn by submissive inquiry from authoritative sources, such as Bhagavad Gita or a spiritual master who is fully realized in Krishna consciousness. Today, all facets of human society are thinking that their self-interest is in maintaining this body. Consequently, today's society is simply a society of cats, dogs, and hogs. From Vedic literatures, we can understand that we don't have to work hard all day to simply maintain this body. We are working very hard because we are trying to control material nature for the purposes of sense gratification. One who can come to understanding that Krishna is the root of everything, the origin of everything, can understand the meaning of Ishvarah Paramah Krishna. Krishna is the supreme controller. In the universe there are many Ishvaras or controllers, but Krishna is the supreme among all of them. Krishna consciousness gives us this knowledge. Without it, we will remain ignorant of our real self-interest. Modern society is in dire need of intellectual persons or brahmanas who can broadcast real spiritual knowledge all over the world. That is an absolute necessity for a society which is working hard simply to exploit nature. If people try to understand this Krishna consciousness movement scientifically and philosophically, with their best knowledge and judgment, and try to cooperate, there will be peace all over the world. In essence, the method is very simple. We need only chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and follow the regulative principles mentioned before. By following the regulative principles, we will be avoiding the 4 pillars of sinful life, and by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, we will be associating with God constantly. Thus, there will be peace among all classes of men. Jai, we've finished this beautiful chapter of the book, and we're going to start the next one in the next episode tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and this book is available in the link in the description of this episode, as well as our email. It's right there, shravanamteam@gmail.com. Stay tuned. This was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. back with the elevation to Krishna consciousness by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 44, we're starting the chapter 4, Knowing Krishna as He is. We do not need any high qualifications to offer prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Whatever our social or intellectual position may be, we can offer prayers. We do not have to be very learned or very scholarly, nor do we have to present our prayers in nicely selected words that are poetical, rhetorical, or metaphorical. None of this is required, although if it's there, it's very nice. We simply have to express our feelings, but in order to be able to do this, we have to be aware of our position. Once we are aware of our position, our feelings can be expressed sincerely and automatically. What is our position? This has been taught by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who teaches us how to pray in his prayer. Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam vachakadisha kaumaye mama janmani janmanishvare bhavatak bhaktirahai tukitvayi. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I have any desire to enjoy beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. What I want only is that I may have your causeless devotional service in my life, birth after birth. Shikshashtakam, verse number 4. In this prayer, the Lord of the universe is called Jagadish. Jagat means universe and Isha means Lord. Whether we are Hindu, Muslim, or Christian, or whatever, we must acknowledge that there is a supreme controller of this universe. This cannot be denied by anyone who has faith in God. Our conviction should be that our Supreme Father is Jagadish, or Lord of the entire universe. Only Lord Jagadish is in control, everyone else is controlled. The atheists, however, do not like this term because they like to think that they are in control. But actually, this is not the case. All beings in the material world are subject to the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. But the Supreme Lord is above these modes. Tribhi gunamayer bhavair ebhi sarvamidam jagat mohitam na bhijanati mamebhyah paramavyayam. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above them and inexhaustible. Bhagavad Gita 7.13. The Brahma Samhita also gives us information regarding Jagadish, the Supreme. In that work, Lord Brahma says that the Supreme Controller is Lord Krishna himself. Ishvara Parama Krishna. The word Ishvara means controller, and the word Parama means supreme. All of us are controllers to some limited extent. If we have nothing to control, sometimes we keep a dog or a cat so we can say, "My dear dog, please come here." In this way we can think, I am the controller. Sometimes the tables turn, however, and we find that the dog controls the master. This happens because actually no one is the controller and everyone is controlled. Unfortunately, we are forgetful of this situation, and this forgetfulness is called Maya. We refuse to accept any controller of this universe, because if we accept a controller, we have to account for our sinful activities. Just as when we accept the government, we have to account for our unlawful activities. Our position is that we want to continue our sinful activities, and therefore we deny the existence of a controller. This is the basic principle of godlessness.
The current propaganda that God is dead is spread because people want to continue being rascals without restriction. This is the basic principle underlying the denial of God's existence. But, however much we deny His existence, He will not die. In this regard, there is a Bengali proverb that says, Shakuni share goru marana. The word shakuni means vulture. Vultures enjoy dead animal carcasses, especially the carcass of the cow. Sometimes, a vulture may go for days without a carcass. Therefore, this proverb says that the vulture curses the cow, wishing him to die. But this does not mean that the cow will die just to oblige the vulture. Similarly, these atheistic vultures who want to see God dead so they can take pleasure in thinking now God is dead, I can do anything I like. We must know then for certain that there is a controller. That is the beginning of knowledge. Why should we deny the truth? In every field of activity, we find some finite controller. So how can we deny the existence of an infinite controller in this creation? It is not without reason, therefore, that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu particularly uses this word, Jagadish, Lord of the Universe. He does not manufacture the term, for it is found in many different Vedic mantras. For instance, Tavakara kama lavarena kama bhutashringam dalita hiranyakashipu tanubringam keshavadrita narahari rupa jaya jagadisha hare jaya jagadisha hare jaya jagadisha hare. O my Lord, your hands are very beautiful, like the lotus flower, but with your long nails you have ripped apart the wasp Hiranyakashipu. Unto you, Lord of the universe, do I offer my humble obeisances. Hiranyakashipu was an atheist who denied the existence of God, but God came as Lord Nrisimhadev, a half-man, half-lion incarnation, and killed him. Therefore, praise is given to the Lord as supreme controller of the universe and all living entities. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. There is also another prayer. Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatu Me. O Lord of the universe, please be visible unto me. In all these prayers and in many others, the supreme controller of the universe is acknowledged. Everyone is trying to become supreme controllers, but it is not possible by individual, communal, or national effort. Because everyone is trying to be supreme, there is great competition in the world. The world is created in such a way, however, that no one can become supreme. Regardless of what position we place ourselves in, we will find that someone is inferior to us and that someone is superior. No one individual can say, I am the supreme, no one is above me. Nor can anyone say, I am the most inferior, no one is below me. Once we think that we are the most inferior, we'll immediately find someone is inferior to us. And once we think that we are the supreme, we'll immediately find someone superior. This is our position. God's position, however, is not like this. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna asserts his superiority himself in this way. Mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya Mai sarvam idam protam sutremani ganaiva. O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Bhagavad Gita 7.7. God is Asamardha, which means that no one is equal to or superior to him. If we find someone who has no superior, we can understand him as God. God can be defined as one who has no superior and who has no equal. This is the Vedic version. In the Upanishads, it is said, "Na tat samascha bhyadikascha drishyate." No one is found equal to or greater than him. Another characteristic of God is that he has nothing to do. In the material world, when a man is considered very important, he always has a great number of things to do. The President of the United States, for instance, is considered to be the supreme man in the country. But as soon as there is some disturbance in Central Europe or in any other place in the world, he immediately has to call a meeting of his cabinet to consider how to deal with the situation. So even he is required to do so many things. If he does not do anything, he is no longer the supreme man. In Vedic literatures, however, we find that God has nothing to do. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. Krishna may act in so many ways in the world, but it is not because he is required to do so. This is indicated in Bhagavad Gita. Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana nanavaptam avaptavyam varta eva cha karmani. O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Neither am I in want of anything, nor have I the need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in work. Bhagavad Gita 3.22. In this respect, it is interesting to note that one European gentleman who went to Calcutta and visited several temples noted that in the temple of the goddess Kali, the deity had a very ferocious figure with a chopper in hand and was cutting off the heads of demons and wearing them as garlands. In other temples, he saw the deity engaged in similar activities. But when he came to the Radha Krishna temple, he said, "I find that in this temple there is God." When asked how he concluded this, he said, "In every temple I saw that the deity was doing something, but here I see that God is simply playing a flute and enjoying himself. He obviously has nothing to do." This is a very intelligent conclusion. Indeed, it is the Vedic conclusion. Jai. So thank you so much for tuning in today, and this book is in the description. You can find the link to read, download, or purchase. So please, this is your chance, and our email is also there if you'd like to connect with us. So this was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time, continuing reading this beautiful chapter about knowing Krishna as he is. So stay tuned. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, and we are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, page number 50. Nowadays, it is becoming fashionable for people to claim that they are becoming God by meditation. This means that by meditation, it is possible to transform oneself into God. In other words, God meditates, and by meditation, he becomes God. This is all nonsense. God is God, and he was always God and will always be God. Even as an infant on the lap of his mother, Krishna is God.
No meditation was required, no austerity or penance. When Putana, the demonic witch, came to poison baby Krishna, she came as a beautiful young girl and asked Mother Yashoda, "Oh Yashoda Mai, you have a very nice baby. Will you kindly give him to me so I can nurse him?" Yashoda was a very simple village woman, and she said, "Oh yes, you can take my child." Putana had smeared poison on her breasts, and she intended to kill Krishna by letting him suck them. This is the demonic spirit. The demons are always wanting to kill Krishna, so they can say, God is dead, there is no God, God is impersonal. Krishna was so kind to Putana that he allowed her to nurse him, but when he sucked her breasts, he not only sucked out the poison, but her life as well. Putana fell to the ground, dead, and was immediately transformed into her original demonic form. So this is God. In the lap of his mother, he is God. He doesn't have to become God by meditation, penance, austerity, or by following rules or regulations. He is substantially and eternally God and has nothing to do. If one claims that he can become God by worshipping such and such a deity or by meditating, we should immediately take it that he is not God but a dog. In understanding God, he must be careful to accept the Vedic conclusion only. Natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. God has nothing to do. Why would God have to do something to become God? If we manufacture gold, that is artificial gold, not real gold. Gold is natural, and similarly God is natural. In his childhood pastimes, in the lap of his mother, he is God. While he is playing with his boyfriends, he is God. While he is dancing, he is God. While he is fighting at Kurukshetra, he is God. While he is married to his queens, he is God. While he is speaking, he is God. There is no difficulty in understanding God. All that is required of us is that we listen to Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he tells Arjuna, Aham sarvasya prabhavo mattah sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. Quote, I am the source of everything. From me the entire creation flows. Knowing this, the wise worship me with all their hearts. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 10.8. This means that Sri Krishna is the fountainhead of Lord Shiva and the origin of Vishnu and of Brahma, and of course of all other demigods and other living entities, living creatures. He says further, Mamaivamsho jivaloke jiva bhuta sanatana manashasthani indriyani prakritistani karshati. The living entities in this conditional world are my fragmental parts, and they are eternal. But due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Bhagavad Gita 15.7. In the Brahma Samhita, Lord Brahma explains that if we are looking for God, here is God. Preman jana charita bhakti vilochanena shantah sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yam shyama sundaram achintya guna swarupam govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Quote, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shyama Sundara, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their hearts of hearts with the eyes of devotion, tinged with the salve of love. Unquote. Brahma Samhita 5.38. There are similar descriptions everywhere in Vedic literature. But rascals and demons are so obstinate that even though Krishna is confirmed to be the supreme God by the 12 standard acharyas, Brahma, Narada, Shiva, Bhishma, the Kumaras, Kapila, Manu, etc., and by Vyasa, Devala, and many other devotees, they still refuse to accept him. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also confirms that Krishna is the supreme Godhead, and the Srimad Bhagavatam says, Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam. Srimad Bhagavatam gives a list of all incarnations of God, and at last concludes that the name Krishna, which appears on this list, indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whereas all other names represent manifestations or incarnations. Ete Chamsha Kalach Pumsach. All other names of God are either parts of God or portions of parts. The parts are called Amsha, and the portions of parts are called Kalaha. As living entities, we are Amsha, but we are very fragmental Amsha. All others are either Amsha or Kalaha, but Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Our prayers should be directed to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and none else. Therefore, we pray with Brahma. Chintamani prakarasadma sukalpa vriksha laksha vriteshu surabhira bibalayantam lakshmi sahasrashatasam brahma sevyamanam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is tending the cows, fulfilling all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of wish-fulfilling trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds and thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. Unquote. Brahma Samhita 5.29. Here, Krishna is called the original person, Adi Purusham. We are all persons. Our father is a person, and therefore we are persons. If we trace our father's father back, we will find that he was also a person, and that his father was a person, and so on, all the way back to Lord Brahma, who was the first created person in this universe. Then we will also find that Lord Brahma's father, Vishnu, is also a person. Everyone is a person, and Krishna is the supreme person. The impersonalist's understanding of God is called Nirarcha. Ni means negative, and Archa means form. So Nirarcha means negative form. The impersonalists are mistaken when they think that God has no form at all. The word Nirarcha does not indicate that he has no form, but that he has no material form as we do. Form is there, but it is not material, it is spiritual form. What is the value of our form? This form will be changed after a few years, as soon as we give up the body. Our forms are changed just as we change our suits and dresses, but God doesn't have a form like this. Therefore, he is sometimes called Nirarcha. Form is there, but that also has been explained in Brahma Samhita. Lord Brahma describes his form in this way. Venum kvanvantam aravinda dalaya taksham barhavatam samasitam buddha sundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya vishesha shobham govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Anganiyasya sakalendriya vritimanti pashyanti panti kalayanti chiram jaganti ananda chinmaya sadujvala vigrahasya govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept at playing on his flute with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head bedecked with a peacock's feather, and the figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, and substantiality, and is thus full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of that transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs, and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. Brahma Samhita 5.30 and 32. This form has nothing whatsoever to do with material forms. Impersonalists say, "Oh, you say Krishna has a form. If so, how can you say that he is the supreme? The impersonal Brahman is the supreme, and the impersonal Brahman is formless." But we have information from Bhagavad Gita that Krishna is the source of the impersonal Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtanam amritasya vyayasya cha shashvatasya cha dharmasya sukhasya kantikasya cha. Quote, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is immortal and imperishable, eternal, the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. Bhagavad Gita 14.27. Unquote. Krishna has certainly form, but his form, as stated before, is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. The attributes of his transcendental body are summarized by Lord Brahma in this way. Ishvara Parama Krishna Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Brahma Samhita 5.1. The word Govinda means he who gives pleasures to the senses. We perceive pleasure through our senses, and therefore Krishna, who is the reservoir of pleasure, is called Govinda. If we serve Krishna with purified senses, we will begin to relish the pleasure of that supreme reservoir. How can we describe God or understand his glories? It is not possible. God is unlimited. Regardless of our finite limitations, however, we can express our own feelings and say, "My Lord, my God." This will be accepted. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches us to pray in this way. Ainandatanoja kinkaram patitam mam vishame bhavam budau kripaya tava pada pankaja stita duli sadrisham vichintaya. O son of Maharaj Nanda, I am your eternal servitor, and although I am so, somehow or other I have fallen in the ocean of birth and death. Please, therefore, pick me up from this ocean of death and fix me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Shikshashtakam, verse 5. This should be the standard of prayer. Jai. We're going to stop here for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and the link to this book is in the description, where you can read, download, or purchase the copy of this wonderful, wonderful book. We're directly reading how does Krishna look, what is his form, what does he do, what does he not do, he has nothing to do. And yes, and tomorrow we will finish this chapter and start another chapter called Knowing Krishna's Energies. It's very, very important. So stay tuned. This was Shravanam Diaries. Thank you again for tuning in today, and we will see you next time. Krishna, Hare Krishna, and we are back with the elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 56. This should be the standard of prayer. We should only want to be placed as one of the atoms at Krishna's lotus feet, to render service unto Him. Everyone is praying to God with some interest. But even if we pray to God, give me some money, give me some relief, a nice house, a nice wife, or nice food, that is also good. Yet this is not the standard of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's prayer. Our only prayer should be that the Lord enable us to serve Him birth after birth. Our prayer should be, Dear Lord, you are so great that I want to engage in your service. I have been serving all these rascals, and I am not satisfied. Now I've come to you. Please engage me in your service. This is the last word in prayer. Some people complain that when they pray to God, they do not feel His presence. We should know that this is due to our incapacities, not God's. There are two conceptions of presence: the physical conception and the vibrational conception. The physical conception is temporary, whereas the vibrational conception is eternal. When we enjoy or relish the vibration of Krishna's teachings in Bhagavad Gita, or when we chant Hare Krishna, we should know that by those vibrations He is immediately present. He is absolute, and because of this, His vibration is just as important as His physical presence. When we feel separation from Krishna or the spiritual master, we should just try to remember their words of instruction, and we will no longer feel that separation. Such association with Krishna and the spiritual master should be association by vibration, not physical presence. That is real association. We put so much stress on seeing, but when Krishna was present on this earth, so many people saw Him and did not realize that He is God. So what is the advantage of seeing? By seeing Krishna, we will not understand Him, but by listening carefully to His teachings, we can come to the platform of understanding. We can touch Krishna immediately by sound vibration. Therefore, we should give more stress to the sound vibration of Krishna and of the spiritual master. Then we will feel happy and won't feel separation. From Srimad Bhagavatam, we understand that when Krishna departed from this world, Arjuna was overwhelmed with sorrow. But when he began to remember the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, he became pacified. Arjuna was Krishna's constant friend. So when Krishna went to his abode, Arjuna was overwhelmed, but just by remembering his teachings, he got relief from the pains of separation. Thus, whenever we feel separation, it is best to remember the teachings. The teachings of Bhagavad Gita were imparted to Arjuna for his happiness and for the happiness of all men. This is indicated by Krishna at the beginning of the 10th chapter, when he says, Bhuya eva mahabhago shrinu me paramam vacha yatteham priyamanaya vakshyami hitakamyaya. Quote, Again, O mighty armed Arjuna, listen to my supreme word, which I shall impart to you for your benefit, and which will give you great joy. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 10.1. By hearing these words of Krishna, Lord Krishna, and following them carefully, we will attain not only peace in the world, but the supreme peace, Param Shantim. All that is required is that we seek refuge in the lotus feet of Krishna and render service unto him by chanting his glories and pushing this Krishna consciousness movement in every town and village of the world. It is Krishna's promise that by such surrender, peace and eternal life will come automatically. Tameva sharanam gacha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. O sign of Bharata, surrender unto him in all respects, so that by his mercy you can have transcendental peace and the eternal abode. Bhagavad Gita 18.62. And we're starting chapter number 5, knowing Krishna's energies. For Krishna, there is no difference between material and spiritual energy. For him, it is all the same. Sometimes electricity works for cooling purposes, and sometimes it works for heating purposes. But the energy generated from the electric powerhouse is all the same. Similarly, Krishna's energy is always spiritual, but it is acting in different ways. In a town where there may be a department of welfare and a department of police, in the eyes of the government, both are the same, for both are subsidiary parts of the government. But for the individual, they render different services. The material energy may be working in different ways that may not be very pleasant to the living entity. But that does not mean that material energy is not liked by Krishna. It is as important as spiritual energy, but it is engaged to punish the conditioned soul, just as the police department is engaged in punishing criminals. In the Brahma Samhita, it is confirmed that Krishna's energy is always spiritual, but it is acting in different ways, in the different field of activities. In relation to Krishna, there is no distinction between the energies, but for our understanding, we discriminate and say that sometimes the energy is working in a material way and sometimes in a spiritual way. We are thinking that the energy is hot or cold, good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant, but in fact, the energy is the same. Krishna cannot distribute inferior energy because he is not inferior. He is always superior, spiritual, and therefore his energy is always spiritual. Subhadra is the sister of Krishna, and from her comes the incarnation of Durga, the personification of material energy. Subhadra is in the spiritual world and is eternally related to Krishna as his energy. But when Durga conducts her activities here in the material world, it is not that she is to be considered inferior. In the Brahma Samhita, as well as in Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Durga or Maya is acting under Krishna's direction. So how can she be considered inferior? Criminals may think that the police department is an inferior governmental department, but the law-abiding citizens do not think that this is so. It simply functions in a particular way. Similarly, the material energy has to act to bewilder the living entity who is under the direction of Krishna. We are the living entities within the material energy, and we are in this position because we wanted to dominate material nature. Krishna has given us the facility, saying, "All right, you may try, but you cannot be successful." As long as we are in ignorance of how the laws of nature are working, under the supreme direction of Krishna, we will continue to be defeated in our activities. When we understand Krishna in perfection, we will automatically know the laws of nature and how they are acting. Vaishnavas are considered with the background of the laws of material nature. When we understand Krishna in perfection, we can understand that there is in actuality no inferior or material energy, but that everything is spiritual. We can understand that on the higher platform, whatever we are experiencing are the actions and reactions of the different energies of the Supreme Lord. When we understand Krishna perfectly, then these distinctions of superior and inferior energies will disappear. Whatever is engaged in the service of Krishna is superior energy. In the higher sense, everything is serving Krishna, and those who are highly elevated understand this. That the Lord has various energies is confirmed in Vedic literatures. Yet, the Supreme Lord personally has nothing to do. How is this? He has not to strive for wealth, for all wealth is His, nor for knowledge, for all knowledge is His, nor for power, for all power is His, nor for beauty, fame, or renunciation, for they are all His in full. Nor does He directly manage universal affairs, for He has many assistants who can conduct affairs while He remains in His abode. This is confirmed in Shri Upanishad. Ane jadekam manaso javiyo naina deva apnuvan purvam arshat tadhavato jnanatyeti tishtat tasmi napomata rishva dadhati. Quote, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although fixed in His abode, is more swift than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach Him, although in one place He has control over those who supply the air and rain. He surpasses all in excellence. Unquote. Shri Ishopanishad Mantra 4. Thus, Krishna has no work to perform. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, He simply engages in enjoying Himself with the gopis, coward girls, and His consort Radharani. Krishna, as Krishna, does not really engage in killing demons. When Krishna kills demons, he is known as Vasudev Krishna, not the original Krishna. When Krishna expands himself, he first expands as Balaram, then Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudev. As Vasudev, he acts in Mathura and Dwarka. But as Krishna, in his original feature, he remains in Vrindavan. This may seem to be confusing. Even one of the greatest fiction writers in Bengal misunderstood and thought that Krishna of Vrindavan and Krishna of Dwarka and Krishna of Mathura were three different persons. But this is not difficult to understand if we know that the nature of Krishna's expansions. Krishna is the same, and he is the one without a second, but he can expand himself in billions and trillions of forms. This is all for the purpose of his enjoyment. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains his different manifestations to Arjuna in this way. Uchay Shrava Samashvanam Vidhimam Amritodbhavam Airavatam Gajendranam Naranam Cha Naradhipam Ayudhanam Aham Vajram Dhenunam Asmika Madhuk Prajanashchasmi Kandarpah Sarpanam Asmi Vasukir. Of horses know me to be Uchayashrava, who rose out of the ocean, born of the elixir of immortality. Of lordly elephants I am Airavata, and among men I am the monarch. Of weapons I am the thunderbolt, among cows I am Kamadhuk, giver of abundant milk. Of procreators I am Kandarpa, the god of love, and of serpents I am Vasuki, the chief. Bhagavad Gita 10.27 and 28. Lord Krishna further enumerated the many great manifestations of the material creation and explained how each was representative of himself. He concluded a long, detailed account of these manifestations by saying, Athava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjuna vishtabhyaham idam kritsnam ekam shena stito jagat. Quote, but what need is there, Arjuna, for all this detailed knowledge? With a single fragment of myself, I pervade and support the entire universes. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 10.42. Yeah, we're going to stop here for today. This was really a lot. We're discussing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so there we go. This is His unlimited glories. And we will continue with knowing Krishna's energies tomorrow in the next episode. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I consider you are very fortunate if this is the first time you come across Hare Krishna movement and Krishna Consciousness and you got to listen to the entire episode. This is incredible. Stay tuned, and the link to this book is in the description if you'd like to check it out. It's there for download, purchase, or reading online. And there's also our email if you have any questions or feedback. So this was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, and we are back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 64. Thus, this material world is existing on one plenary portion of Krishna. If Krishna didn't enter this universe, it could not exist. Similarly, unless the spirit soul, which is a fragmental portion of Krishna, enters this body cannot exist. As soon as the spirit soul leaves, the body immediately becomes useless. When Krishna enters into matter, matter has value. This is true for the minute individual atom and the great universe as well. Since the manifestations of Krishna are so great, we should know that His enjoyment is far greater than ours. We have to try to understand what kind of enjoyment Krishna likes. Everyone knows that God is great, and we can conclude from this that His enjoyment is great also. In this regard, Swarupa Damodar Goswami has written a verse which says that although the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna may appear like ordinary material affairs, this is not actually the case. Radharani is the pleasure potency of Krishna. In the Vedanta Sutra, the Absolute Truth is said to be always enjoying the pleasure potency. When we want pleasure, we cannot have it alone. We feel pleasure in the company of friends and family. I may speak in a room alone, but if I speak in a room before other people, the pleasure is increased. Pleasure means that there must be others, and therefore Krishna, the Absolute Truth, who is always engaged in enjoying himself, has become many. We are Krishna's parts and parcels, and have been created to give pleasure to Krishna. There you go. Definition of who we are and what we're meant to be, or what we're meant to do, right? Okay, let's read that again. We are Krishna's parts and parcels and have been created to give pleasure to Krishna. Haribol! The chief pleasure potency is Radharani. And so Radha and Krishna are always together. whereas the material energy is conducted by the external potency, Maya. The spiritual world is conducted by the internal potency, Radharani. We often pray to Radharani because she is the pleasure potency of Krishna. The very word Krishna means all attractive, but Radharani is so great that she attracts Krishna. If Krishna is always attractive to everyone and Radharani is attractive to Krishna, how can we imagine the position of Srimati Radharani? We should try humbly to understand and offer her our obeisances, saying, Radharani, you are so dear to Krishna. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are Krishna's beloved. We offer our humble, respectful obeisances unto you. Radharani is very dear to Krishna, and if we approach Krishna through the mercy of Radharani, we can easily attain him. If Radharani recommends a devotee, Krishna immediately accepts him, however foolish he may be. Consequently, in Vrindavan we find that devotees chant Radharani's name more often than Krishna's. Wherever we go in India, we will find devotees calling Jai Radhe. We should be more interested in worshipping Radharani, for however fallen we may be, if somehow or other we can please her, we can very easily understand Krishna. If we try to understand Krishna by the speculative process, we will have to spend many lifetimes of speculation. But if we take to devotional service and just try to please Radharani, then Krishna can be very easily realized. Radharani is such a great devotee that she can deliver Krishna. Even Krishna cannot understand Radharani's qualities. He fails to understand her because she is so great. In order to understand Radharani, Krishna actually accepted her position. Krishna thought, although I am full and complete in every respect, I still do not understand Radharani. Why is that? This obliged Krishna to accept the propensities of Radharani, and this accounts for his manifestation as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, but he is Krishna accepting the propensities of Radharani. Radharani is always feeling separation from Krishna, and similarly in the position of Radharani, Lord Chaitanya was always feeling that separation. Furthermore, those who follow the teachings of Lord Chaitanya should experience and relish the feelings of separation, not of meeting. The Goswamis, disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most perfect and highly elevated beings, never said, I have seen Krishna. I've seen Krishna. Instead, they constantly cried, where is Radharani? Where are Lalita and Vishaka and the other damsels of Vrindavan? In their mature stage of love of Godhead, when they were living in Vrindavan, the Goswamis would also cry, Radharani, where are you? Where are your associates? Where are you, O son of Nanda Maharaj? Where are you all? In this way, they were searching after Krishna, and they never at any time said, last time I saw Krishna dancing with the gopis. Such claims are not made by a mature devotee, but by one who takes things very cheaply. Some people think that Radha and Krishna are so cheap that they may be seen every night, but this is not the teaching of the Goswamis, who were always searching after Krishna, crying, where are you? Where are you, Radharani? Where are you, Krishna? Are you there by Govardhan Hill? Are you on the bank of the Yamuna? In this way, throughout the whole tract of Vrindavan, the Goswamis were crying and searching after Radha and Krishna like madmen. We have to follow in the footsteps of the Goswamis and search out Radha and Krishna in this way. Vrindavan is in our hearts, and we must search for him there. Aww, look at that. Oh my god. Vrindavan is in our hearts, and we must search for him there. This is the process recommended by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the process of worship in separation. Feeling separation from Krishna, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would throw himself into the sea. Sometimes he would leave his room in the dead of night and disappear. No one would know where he had gone, but all the while he was searching after Krishna. Thus, it is not that we are to enjoy the loving exchanges between Krishna and Radha like spectators at some sports show. We must feel separation from them. The more we feel separation, the more we should understand that we are advancing. With our material senses, we cannot see Krishna, nor can we even hear his name. We can begin to perceive him when we advance in devotional service. That devotional service begins with the tongue, not the legs, eyes, or ears. The tongue must be utilized to chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and take Krishna Prasadam. Thus, the tongue has a dual function, and by utilizing it in this way, we will realize Krishna. We cannot see Krishna with our material eyes, nor hear about him with material ears, nor touch him with our hands, but if we engage our tongue in his service, he will reveal himself, saying, "Here I am." This chanting of Hare Krishna extinguishes the blazing fire of material nature. This is also the purport to the following prayer to the spiritual master. Samsara davana lalidha loka tranaya karunya gana ganatvam praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya vande guru shri Charanaravindam. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master extinguishes the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Guru Vashtakam, verse 1. This material world is often compared to a forest fire, which takes place automatically. No one wants a forest fire, but there is often lightning, or carelessness, or friction, or whatever, and the fire immediately takes place. Similarly, this material world is beset with a blazing fire of problems. Everyone wants to live here peacefully, but situations develop in such a way that this is not possible for anyone. We struggle very hard to adjust things in so many ways, but nature's laws are so cruel and dangerous that in spite of our hopes and plans, the blazing fire of the problems of material existence continues. In this country, for instance, we have attempted to put out the fire of war, but it has not been possible. There was the First World War, and then a League of Nations was formed to try to prevent a second, but despite these attempts, a second took place. Now a United Nations has been constructed to help end war, but war is going on in Vietnam, in Egypt, in Pakistan, and other places. No one wants a third world war, but it seems imminent. It is not possible to send a fire brigade, a few men with buckets of water, to extinguish a great fire in the forest. To extinguish a roaring forest fire, there must be volumes of water. In other words, there must be an arrangement that is beyond human endeavor. When there is a merciful cloud over the forest fire, the cloud bursts, rain pours down in torrents, and the blazing fire is immediately extinguished. As a cloud collects water from the ocean, similarly, the spiritual master collects water from Krishna's ocean of mercy and pours it over the blazing fire of material existence. Thus, one who bestows or distributes the merciful rain of Krishna is called a spiritual master or guru. In Vedic literatures, it is said that in order to understand the transcendental science of Krishna consciousness, we must try to acquire knowledge of how to extinguish this blazing fire of problems. Scientists, philosophers, and other educated men are trying very hard to extinguish it, but the result seems to be bigger and bigger bombs. The karmis or fruitive laborers are working with heart and soul, day and night, to extinguish this fire or to diminish the miserable condition of material existence by dint of hard labor. The jnanis or philosophers are also trying, but they have become disgusted and so proclaim this world is false. Thinking this, they try to merge into the existence of the Supreme and in this way extinguish the fire. This is like the jackal who tries to pick some grapes from a vine and when he fails says, "Oh, these grapes are sour anyway." The yogis or meditators try to gain superior mystic power, to become greater than the greatest, smaller than the smallest, lighter than lightest, heavier than the heaviest. But this is just so much child's play. With any material body, whether it be great or small, light or heavy, the problems of material existence will remain. In this way, one may progress from one stage to another, coming from the stage of karmi or fruitive laborer to the stage of jnani or philosopher, to the stage of yogi or meditator, but in any case, one finally has to come to the platform of bhakti or devotional service. This is the real evolutionary process. It is indicated in Bhagavad Gita in this way: Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyante vasudeva sarvam iti samahatma sudurlabha. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Jai. We're going to stop here for today, and the link to this book is in the description, as well as our email for feedback or comments or questions. And yes, so we will continue this wonderful book in the next episode, so stay tuned. And this was Shravanam Diaries. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hare Krishna. Jai, and we're back with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Page number 71. Surrender to Krishna is the point, that is the aim of life, and the bhaktas, the intelligent men of the world, take to the stage immediately. Therefore Krishna says that they are wise men. If, after many births, one has to come to this point of surrender, then why not immediately? The blazing fire of material nature is supervised by Durga. Often she is portrayed with weapons in her hands. She has 10 hands, and each holds a different type of weapon. This indicates that she is ruling all 10 directions of this universe. She wields the different weapons to chastise the demons. There is one famous picture of a demon struggling with a lion, and the goddess Durga is pulling the demon's hair and pushing her trident against his chest. If we study this picture, we can determine that we are the demon, and that the trident is the threefold miseries of material existence, from which we are always suffering. Goodness gracious. Wow. We have an Instagram account, and I will try to find that picture and post it with this quote. Because this is just, like sometimes you look at this, goddess Durga, wow, the demon's hair, trident against his chest, wow, nasty demon. And then here, like Prabhupada says, if we study this picture, we can determine that we are the demon, and that the trident is the threefold miseries of material existence from which we are always suffering. Wow, yeah. So the demons basically means that we are not devotees, right? We don't have love of God. We are averse to God, so. Okay. Some miseries are inflicted by other living entities, some are inflicted by natural disasters, and some are inflicted by the mind and body themselves. In one way or another, we are always struggling against these 3 types of miseries. No one in the material creation can say that he is free from them. The trident of this material nature is pressed against everyone's chest, and because of this, pure happiness within this material world is not possible. We may try to satisfy Mother Durga by worshipping her or by giving her some bribe, but Durga is not so easily bribed. Therefore, we should know that our aim of life should be to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should make every arrangement, social, political, philosophical, or religious, but the aim should be to approach the Supreme Person. In the Vedas, it is stated that the learned, advanced people, the demigods of the creation, simply look to the lotus feet of Krishna. The aim should be the same with human civilization. Without looking to Krishna's lotus feet, all religious, social, or political endeavors will fail. It is not possible to make progress as long as our desires are anchored in the material world. In this regard, there is a story of a bridegroom's party who had to go to the bride's house down the river. It was settled that they would start at night by boat and reach the destination early in the morning. Therefore, at night, after supper, the jubilant party got aboard a boat, made themselves comfortable, and instructed the boatman to start. Since all the members of the party were seated comfortably, and since the river breeze was very pleasant, they slept soundly that night. In the morning they all got up early, but to their astonishment they saw that the boat had not moved an inch toward the destination, even though the boatman had rowed vigorously all night long. Finally, after inquiring, they found that despite the boatman's rowing, the boat had not moved because they had failed to raise the anchor. The marriage ceremony was thus spoiled because of a foolish mistake. Our present civilization is therefore a mistaken civilization, because the mistaken leaders have forgotten to raise the anchor of attachment. Instead, the anchor is being more and more firmly fixed because they have structured the social order on the basis of sense gratification. Wow, let's read that one again, because instead, right? Instead, the anchor is being more and more firmly fixed because they have structured the social order on the basis of sense gratification. This sense gratifying social and political setup, maintained by various plans and schemes, has been described in Bhagavad Gita as follows: Kamam ashritya dushpuram dambha mana madanvita mohad grihitva sadgrahan pravartante shuchivrata chintama parimeyam cha pralayantam upashrita kamopa bhoga parama etavad iti nishchita. The demoniac, taking shelter of insatiable lust, pride, and false prestige, and being thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work, attached by the impermanent. Their belief is that to gratify the senses unto the end of life is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, there is no measurement to their anxiety. Bhagavad Gita 6.10 and 11. The leaders, like the boatmen, are all illusioned. They mislead us into taking some temporary benefit. But how long can their plans and schemes go on? If they persist until they die of heart failure or are killed by assassins, then another just like them takes their place. Even the so-called philosophers of modern society are captivated by material name and fame, and so they do not lead the general populace in the proper direction. Thus, the anchor of life remains deeply fixed in the waters of nations for the purpose of sense gratification. And thus, our so-called civilization rots in a stagnant pool because we are not moving. We are always in the same port of problematic life. All schemes are only useless scraps of paper in the face of war, famine, earthquakes, and other disasters. All these disasters are warnings from Mother Durga, and by them she confirms her eternal superiority over the illusioned plan makers. Yeah, well, all of us have experienced that one in 2020, right? Yeah, 2020 is a grand scale, but generally we'll face that. The different weights on the anchor, which keep us grounded in material life, are our attachments to the material body due to our ignorance of spiritual facts, our attachment to kinsmen due to bodily relations, our attachment to our land of birth and our material possessions, our attachment to material science, and our attachment to religious forms and rituals without knowing their true purpose. All these anchor the boat of the human body in the material universe. Sri Krishna, using the example of a strongly rooted banyan tree, advises us in Bhagavad Gita how to get rid of this attachment once and for all. Narupamasyeha tato palabhyate nanto nachadir nacha sampratishtha ashvatham enam suvirudhamulam asangashastrenadri dhena chitva tatah padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyah tam eva chadyam purusham prapadye yatah pravrittih prasrita purani. Quote, the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. This banyan tree must be cut out with determination by the weapon of detachment. Therefore, one must seek that situation from which, having gone, one never comes back. One must surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything has begun and is extending since time immemorial." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 15.3 and 4. The Personality of Godhead, who is fully cognizant of everything in this creation, everything in His creation, informs us in our best interest that we must desire to get rid of this material existence. We must detach ourselves from everything material. To make the best use of a bad bargain, our material existence should be 100% spiritualized by constant association with Krishna's message, His devotees, and His names. Therefore, everyone who ordinarily engages in material affairs can derive the highest benefit from this Krishna consciousness movement. All kinds of spiritual endeavors are more or less tinged with material consciousness, material contamination. However, pure devotional service is transcendental to all pollution. We need not artificially adopt principles of materialism. We need only fix our minds on the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Jai, thank you so much for tuning in today. We're going to stop here because tomorrow we're going to start the next chapter, chapter number 6, Taking to Krishna Consciousness. Yes. So the link to this book is in the description, as well as our email for your feedback or your questions. Feel free to connect with us. And this was Shravanam Diaries. Stay tuned and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna. Jai, and we're back with the elevation to Krishna consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Starting chapter 6, Taking to Krishna Consciousness, on page number 77. In India, all scriptures and great spiritual teachers, including Shankaracharya, an impersonalist, accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord. In the beginning of his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, Shankaracharya says that Narayana is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested creation. And in the same commentary, he says that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, is Krishna, appearing as the son of Devaki and Vasudeva. Thus, in this respect, there is little difference of opinion about Krishna. Those who are authorities, be they personalists or impersonalists, are in agreement that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. When Krishna was present on this planet, he proved by his activities and opulence that he is the Supreme Lord. If we are actually anxious to understand who and what the Supreme Lord is, all of the information is given in Vedic scriptures, Vedic literatures. If we utilize whatever we have in our possession to understand God, Krishna will prove that He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we but accept this one fact, then all of our education is complete. It is fashionable to research, to try to find out who is God, but this is not necessary. God is present, and He Himself says, Mattah parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidham protam sutre mani ganaiva. Quote, O conqueror of wealth, Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Unquote, Bhagavad Gita 7.7. this information is not only given in Bhagavad Gita but in other scriptures as well, and it has been accepted from the very beginning by great acharyas, teachers like Shankaracharya, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Lord Chaitanya, and many other stalwart personalities, authorities. Even at the present moment, those who do not accept Krishna as the Supreme Lord are accepting the knowledge given by Krishna to Arjuna. So, in this way, they are accepting Krishna indirectly. If one accepts Bhagavad Gita as a great book of knowledge, he is also accepting Krishna. There is no doubt that the Supreme Absolute Truth is Krishna, and that we have our relationship, eternal relationship with Him. Our eternal relationship with God is Shab Bhajan. God is great and we are subordinate. He is the predominator and we are the predominated. The duty of the subordinate is to please the predominator. Similarly, if we want to be happy, we must learn how to make Krishna happy. This is the process of Krishna consciousness. But how is it to be understood that the Supreme Lord is satisfied by our service and labor? It is actually possible to perfect our service or occupational duty. Everyone has some service to perform according to his designations. He may be an Indian or American, Hindu, Muslim or Christian, man, woman, Brahman, Vaishya, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, or whatever. In any case, he is meant to do some sort of work, and that work is his occupational duty. Perfection of duty can be tested by seeing whether the Supreme Lord is satisfied by its execution. The Supreme Lord's satisfaction can be tested by the Lord's representative, the spiritual master. Therefore, it is important to seek out a real representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and work under him. If he is satisfied, then we should know that the Supreme Lord is also satisfied. That is explained by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati kutopi dhyayam stuvam stasyaya shastri sandhyam vande guroshri charanaravindam. Quote, by the mercy of the spiritual master, one is benedicted by the mercy of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, no one can make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Gurvashtakam, verse 8. Unquote. The spiritual master is the representative of the Supreme Lord. How does he become the representative? If one says that such and such an object is a pair of spectacles, and if he teaches his disciple in this way, there is no mistake as to the identity of the object. The spiritual master is he who has captured the words of particular disciplic succession. In the case given, the key word is spectacles, that's all. The spiritual master does not have to say anything beyond that. This is the qualification. Krishna says, I am the Supreme, and the spiritual master says, Krishna is the Supreme. It is not that to be a representative of Krishna or to be a spiritual master, one has to have any extraordinary qualification. He simply has to carry the message from the authority as it is, without any personal interpretation. As soon as there is some personal interpretation, the message is lost and the instructions become offensive. A person who interprets the scriptures according to his own whims should be immediately rejected. Once Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "You must at least have enough sense to test, to find out who is a spiritual master and who is not." For instance, if we want to purchase something, we must at least have some idea of what that thing is, otherwise we will be cheated. If we want to purchase a mango from the market, we must at least know what type of food a mango is and what it looks like. Similarly, we must have some preliminary knowledge of the qualification for a bona fide spiritual master. Bhagavad Gita itself gives some information about the succession of spiritual masters. Lord Sri Krishna says, "Imam vivasvate yogam proktavanaham avyayam vivasvan manave praha manorikshvakave bravit evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduh sakaliniham mahata yogo nashtah parantapa sa evayam maya tedya yoga proktah puratana bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasyam hyetaduttamam." Quote, "I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in due course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is told today by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend. Therefore, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science." Bhagavad Gita 4.1-3. That original spiritual disciplic succession was broken, but now we can receive the same message by studying Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks to Arjuna, just as in a far distant time he spoke to the sun god. If we accept the words of Arjuna and Krishna, it may be possible for us to understand Bhagavad Gita. But if we want to interpret it in our own way, the results will be nonsensical. The best way to understand Bhagavad Gita is to accept a bona fide spiritual master. This is not very difficult. Arjuna says that he accepts all that Krishna has said to him, because Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan mayachyuta sthitosmi gata sandehah karishye vachanam tava. Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy, and now I am fixed, without any doubt, prepared to act according to your instructions." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 18.73. Yes, we're going to stop here for today on this very determined note. Thank you so much for tuning in. The link to this book is in the description, and our email for the feedback or any questions is also right there. Thank you so much again for tuning in. This was Shravanam Diaries, and we will see you next time. And we're back with the elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Page number 82. As Arjuna, we should accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and do as he says. Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yat juhoshi dadashi yat, yat tapasyasi kanteya, tat kurushva madarpanam. Quote, O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer, and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me." Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 9.27. By accepting Krishna in this spirit, we can understand complete knowledge. We can attain complete knowledge. If, however, we do not accept Krishna and interpret Bhagavad Gita in our own way, then everything will be spoiled. If we are sincere, we will get a sincere spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. If, however, we want to be cheated, Krishna will send us a cheater, and we will be cheated throughout our lives. That is actually going on. For those who do not want to understand Krishna as he is, but want to understand by dint of their own imperfect vision, Krishna, God, remains unknown. The whole process is to accept Krishna and his instructions, and therefore to render devotional service unto him. It is Srimati Radharani who is the very embodiment of perfect devotional service. In the Brahma Samhita, Radharani is described as Krishna's expansion of his spiritual potency. In this way, she is not different from Krishna. The gopis who tend Radha and Krishna are not ordinary women or girls. They are expansions of Krishna's pleasure potency. Radharani and the gopis should never be accepted as ordinary women. Indeed, to understand their position, we need the guidance of a spiritual master. If we, living entities, want to actually associate with Radharani, that may be possible. Although she is not an ordinary woman, we can become associates of Radharani by qualifying ourselves in advanced devotional service. In devotional service, there is no frustration. Even if we perform only a small amount, it will grow. Devotional service is never lost. As far as material things are concerned, whatever we gain in the world will be lost when the body is finished. But since we are eternal spiritual sparks, our spiritual assets go with us, gradually fructifying. In this way, those who have previously cultivated transcendental consciousness come in contact with Krishna consciousness through this movement. Interest in Krishna consciousness is not commonplace. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that out of many millions and billions of persons, only one is interested in achieving perfection. If we can advertise that simply by reading this book and meditating for 15 minutes, anyone can immediately get power, become successful in business, and pass his examination, many people would be attracted to the book. People are not attracted by Krishna consciousness because they prefer to be cheated by Maya. They think that the perfection of life is in eating a great supply of food, or in sleeping 20 hours, or in having a new mate every night or every day. People are interested in these things, but not in perfection of life. Every intelligent man should at least experiment with Krishna consciousness. He should say, "Alright, I have been enjoying this eating and sleeping for so many lives. These things were available for me to enjoy in my bird and animal bodies. Now, in this life, let me restrict the 4 principles of animalistic life: eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. And let me devote my time to developing Krishna consciousness. In this way, my life will be successful." It is not that we have coined this term, Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the oldest phrase in the history of the world. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru Mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyajimam namaskuru. Mame vaishyasi yuktvaitvam atmanam mad parayana. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. The result is that you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Engage your body in my service, and surrender unto me. Completely absorb in me. Surely will you come to me. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 18.65 and 9.34. The phrase Man Mana Bhava Mad Bhakto means just be always conscious of me. This is Krishna Consciousness. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is repeatedly saying that we should worship him, offer obeisances unto him, and then come to him. Bhagavad Gita clearly points to the absolute necessity of Krishna consciousness, and Bhagavad Gita is accepted as the essence of the Upanishads. Even from the historical point of view, it has no comparison. It has been cultivated on the basis of archaeological evidence that Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita on the battlefield of Kurukshetra more than 5,000 years ago. So this Krishna consciousness movement, even from the historical point of view, is 5,000 years old. Its philosophy is the oldest in the history of the world. If we wish to trace it even further back, we find that Sri Krishna spoke it earlier to the sun god. Krishna is eternal, and consciousness of Krishna is also eternal. In this way, Krishna consciousness should be approached. It should not simply be considered a theory. When Krishna consciousness is covered by any other consciousness, we experience our contaminated, conditioned life. When the sky is clear, we can see the sun's brilliant effulgence, but when it is covered by clouds, we cannot see it. We may be able to perceive the sunlight, but we cannot see the sun disk itself. When the sky is clear, it is in its natural condition. Similarly, our consciousness is eternally Krishna consciousness, because we are part and parcel of Krishna eternally. This is asserted in the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Mamaivamsho jivaloke jiva bhuta sanatanah manah shasthani driyani prakriti sthani karshati. The living entities in this conditional world are my fragmental parts, and they are eternal. But due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. Unquote. Bhagavad Gita 15.7. Somehow or other, we have come in contact with material nature, and because of the mind and the six senses, we are struggling hard to exist. That is Darwin's theory, the struggle for existence, survival of the fittest. However, the actual fact is that our constitutional position is not one of struggle. Struggle is the position of animal life. Human life should be blissful and should have as its goal spiritual advancement. At one time, that was India's principle of life. And there was a class of people, the Brahmanas, who engaged themselves exclusively in spiritual culture. Although Brahminical cultural life is enunciated in the scriptures of India, it is not for Indians alone, but for all human beings. The Vedas were written for all mankind. But it so happened that when the Vedas were written, what is now known as the Indian culture was the only one extant. At that time, the whole planet was called Bharatavarsha, after Emperor Bharata Maharaj, the son of Rishabhadeva. Bharata Maharaj ruled the whole planet, but gradually the planet was divided up. So the Dharma of Vedic culture should not simply be considered Indian or Hindu in a sectarian sense. Jai. We're going to stop here for today, but this is such an important point because in the next episode we will continue about what is Dharma, or the natural occupation of the living entity, what is actual religion, and how all faiths and religions, how it's all related to our eternal religion. And yes, this was Shravanam Diaries. The link to this book is in the description and the email to contact us. So we'd love to hear from you, and we will see you next time. Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, and welcome to Shravanam Diaries podcast. Today morning I was listening to yesterday's episode and I was like, my god, wake up, girl. It's like, I don't know. Seriously, when recording daily podcast, it's maybe a little bit personal and private because it clearly shows where are you in your life according to your voice and mood and everything. But yeah, yesterday it was a very a dynamic day and I was a little bit tired. Okay, but it's just you can continue reading no matter what at any time of the day and anywhere, and absorb yourself in the nectar of Krishna Consciousness in this way and still get immense inspiration. Like yesterday I was very much inspired by basically reading how we're meant to have a blissful life. Like a human experience is supposed to be blissful in Krishna consciousness, in God consciousness, rather than making it a hard struggle for survival and fulfilling our animalistic instincts. Right, so, yes, so, I mean, it's a new thing for me still, even though it's been about a 1.5 month of podcasting, so, but I'm trying to take it as easy and simple as I can, trying to learn from every episode and let it have its own pace. Okay, so enough for today's introduction. Right, so we're continuing with the Elevation to Krishna Consciousness by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, page number 87. Often the word Dharma is translated to mean religion. But to conceive of Dharma as a religion is to misconceive the word. In general usage, the word religion refers to a particular type of faith. The word Dharma does not. Dharma indicates the natural occupation of the living entity. For example, wherever there is fire, there is heat and light. So it may be said that heat and light are the Dharma of fire. Fire cannot change its Dharma. In the same way, liquidity is an intrinsic quality of water, and this quality cannot be changed. If it is, it can no longer be considered water. The Dharma of the individual soul can never be changed, and that Dharma is the occupational duty of rendering service unto the Supreme Lord. Faiths and religions can be changed. Today I may be a Hindu, but tomorrow I may become a Christian or Muslim. In this way, faiths can be changed, but Dharma is a natural sequence, a natural occupation or connection. Krishna says that as soon as there is a discrepancy in the discharge of the dharmas of the living entities, when there is an upsurge of unnatural activities, he descends.
One of the principal purposes of his descent is to re-establish religious principles. The best system of religion is that which best trains us to surrender unto the Supreme Lord. This is the basic principle underlying Bhagavad Gita. We can select our own religion and be Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, Christian, or whatever, as long as we know the real purpose of religion. Indeed, Srimad Bhagavatam does not recommend that we give up our present religion, but it does hint at the purpose of religion. That purpose is love of Godhead, and that religion which teaches us best how to love the Supreme Lord is the best religion. In this age especially, there is a general decay in the consciousness of the masses of people. A few people remember that there is God, but for the most part, people are forgetting Him. Therefore, they cannot be happy. People are thinking that God is dead, or that we have no obligation to God, or that there is no God. This sort of thinking will never make for happiness. When civilization is godless or atheistic as it is today, God or his representative comes to remind people of their relationship with the Supreme Consciousness. When Sanatana Goswami inquired from Lord Chaitanya, "What am I? Why am I always in a miserable condition? What is the position of all living entities?" Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately answered that the real identity is that of servant of God. We should not understand the word servant in the sense of materialistic servant. To become a servant of God is a great position. People are always trying to get some government post or some position in a reputed business firm because the service rendered in such positions earns great profits. Although we are very anxious to get good positions in the government service, we do not stop to think of getting a position in God's service. God is the government of all governments. God's service is Dharma. This Dharma may be described differently in different countries according to different cultural and climatic conditions or situations, but in every religious scripture, obedience to God is instructed. No scripture says that there is no God or that we as living entities are independent. Not the Bible, not the Quran, not the Vedas, or even the Buddhist literatures. Generally, according to Buddhist philosophy, there is no individual soul or no supreme soul. But actually, since Lord Buddha is accepted by Vedic literatures as an incarnation of God, by obeying Lord Buddha, one is actually following God. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a list of incarnations, and Lord Buddha is accepted as one of them. Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled by Vyasadeva 5,000 years ago, and Lord Buddha appeared about 2,600 years ago. So Srimad Bhagavatam actually foretold the event of his incarnation. Lord Buddha preached that there is no God and no soul, that this body is a combination of matter, and that when we dissolve this material combination, sensations of misery and happiness will no longer exist. Then Shankaracharya appeared to preach that the external feature of Brahman, the body, is merely an illusion. In all religions, temple worship and acceptance of authority are present. We may accept Krishna or Lord Jesus Christ or Yehovah or Lord Buddha or Shankaracharya or Guru Nanak. But in any case, acceptance of authority is required. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Sri Krishna accepted as the supreme authority. He is accepted as the supreme authority. Sometimes Krishna descends personally, and sometimes he descends by his incarnations. Sometimes he descends as sound vibration, and sometimes he descends as a devotee.
There are many different categories of avatars. In this present age, Krishna has descended in his holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also confirmed that in this age of Kali, Krishna has descended in the form of transcendental sound vibration. Sound is one of the forms which the Lord takes. Therefore, it is stated that there is no difference between Krishna and his name. Today people have forgotten their relationship with God, but this incarnation of Krishna in the form of his holy names, this chanting of Hare Krishna, will deliver all the people of the world from their forgetfulness. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if we chant or associate with the chanting of the holy names of Krishna, we will reach the highest perfectional stage of life. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, there are different processes for different ages, but the principle of each process remains valid in all ages. It is not that the chanting of Hare Krishna is effective in this age and not in Satya Yuga. Nor is it that people were not chanting the holy names of Krishna in Satya Yuga. In Satya Yuga, meditation was the main process, and great munis meditated for periods extending upwards of 60,000 years. In this age, however, perfection by that means of meditation is not possible, because we are so short-lived. Consequently, in this age, it is especially recommended that we all sit down together and chant Hare Krishna. It is very easy and everyone can take part in it. There is no necessity of education, nor are any previous qualifications required. In this age, people are very slow and unfortunate, and they are contaminated with bad association. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, as a great means of propaganda for spreading love of God. It is not that it is recommended only for Kali Yuga. Actually, it is recommended for every age. There have always been many devotees who have chanted and reached perfection in all ages. That is the beauty of this Krishna Consciousness movement. It is not simply for one age or for one country or for one class of people. Hare Krishna can be chanted by any man, in any social position, in any country, and in any age, for Krishna is the Supreme Lord of all people, in all social positions, in all countries, and in all ages. Thus ends the book Elevation to Krishna Consciousness, and we're going to start the next book tomorrow. So, see you next time. Hare Krishna.